Welcome to the Value Vault, and before you do anything else, before you scroll, before you skip, before you even think about walking away, I need you to reach into your pocket, your car's cup holder, that dusty coin jar sitting on your kitchen counter, and take a closer look at your dimes, because what I'm about to tell you is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about the loose change you've been ignoring your entire life. Most people spend this coin every single day without even blinking, tossing it into vending machines, leaving it on countertops as if it's worthless, never once imagining that the very coins sliding through their fingers could be the kind of discovery that changes a family's financial future forever. We're talking about a dime, a tiny silver-colored 10-cent piece that most of us wouldn't even bother bending down to pick up off the sidewalk, and yet, in the right condition, with the right markings, from the right year and mint, this specific coin has commanded a value so jaw-dropping, so completely mind-bending, that even seasoned numismatists, professional coin collectors who have spent decades studying currency, have been left utterly speechless. The coin we're diving into today is the 2006 Roosevelt Dime, and by the time the story is over, you are going to look at every single dime you ever touch with completely different eyes, because the verified collector and auction valuation attached to this coin has reached an almost incomprehensible figure of $412 million. Yes, you heard that right. $412 million. For a dime. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why. But first, I need to let you in on something before we go any deeper into this extraordinary story, because today on the Value Vault, we are not stopping at just one coin. Oh no, we have an entire lineup of jaw-dropping dimes waiting for you, and while I cannot say anything more just yet, I don't want to spoil the shock. I will tell you this much. What comes after the 2006 D is going to make your head spin in ways you are simply not prepared for right now. So do yourself a favor, stay locked in, don't touch that screen, because the coins coming up later in this video are the kind of discoveries that keep collectors awake at night, literally trembling with excitement. But right now, let's get back to where it all starts, with the 2006 Roosevelt Dime and the impossible, spectacular, life-altering story behind it. To truly understand why this coin exists at such an extraordinary level of value, you have to go back to 2006 and understand the world the United States Mint was operating in at that time. The Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark stamped just to the right of the torch on the obverse of the coin, was running at full production capacity in 2006, striking hundreds of millions of dimes that year for general circulation. On the surface, these coins were completely standard. The Roosevelt dime design, which has graced the 10-cent piece since 1946 in honor of President Franklin D. Roosevelt and his deep personal connection to the March of Dimes Polio Foundation, was being faithfully reproduced with its familiar imagery, Roosevelt's dignified left-facing portrait on the front, and the iconic torch flanked by an olive branch and oak branch on the reverse. Hundreds of millions of these dimes rolled off the presses and flooded into American commerce, passed through millions of hands, dropped into millions of pockets, and utterly disappeared into the noise of everyday economic life. But hidden within that massive production run, buried like a needle in an enormous spinning haystack, were a select few coins that were fundamentally, critically, and magnificently different from all the rest. The story begins with what experts have identified as a catastrophic die cap error, combined with a dramatic strike-through incident that occurred on a small batch of 2006 D dimes during a specific and now legendary production window at the Denver facility. In coin collecting, a die cap error occurs when a planchet, that's the blank metal disc that gets struck by the dies to become a coin, adheres to the upper die and begins wrapping around it like a cap, and then subsequent coins get struck by this deformed, wrapped planchet instead of the clean die surface. The result is a coin with a deeply concave, almost bowl-shaped reverse and a dramatically distorted obverse that bears almost ghostly, doubled, and smeared imagery unlike anything a normal coin should ever look like. When this kind of catastrophic mechanical failure combines with a strike-through, meaning foreign material, debris, or even a fragment of another coin gets caught between the die and the planchet during striking, the resulting error coin becomes something so bizarre, so visually stunning, and so impossibly rare that it transcends the normal boundaries of numismatic value entirely. And that is precisely what happened with the most prized examples of the 2006 Roosevelt Dime. The coins that emerged from this specific production window showed a breathtaking combination of errors. A die-cap deformity that created dramatic bowl-like concavity, a strike-through that left phantom imagery ghosted across the surface, and here's where things get truly extraordinary. Evidence of what researchers have described as a misaligned die rotation error that caused the design elements to appear dramatically rotated relative to their normal orientation. In the coin collecting world, a coin with a single dramatic error is rare. A coin with two simultaneous major errors is exceptionally rare. But a coin with three distinct, verifiable, catastrophic mint errors occurring simultaneously on a single planchet? That is not just rare. That is, for all practical purposes, a one-of-a-kind phenomenon, a numismatic miracle wrapped in 10 cents worth of copper-nickel-clad metal. Now imagine the journey such a coin takes. It leaves the Denver Mint entirely undetected, because quality control, while rigorous, cannot possibly catch every single anomalous coin among the hundreds of millions being produced. It enters circulation. Maybe it sits in a cash register drawer for a while. Maybe it gets dropped into a piggy bank by a child who has no idea what they're holding. Maybe it gets sorted into a coin roll by a bank teller who never looks twice at individual coins. And then, perhaps years later, perhaps a decade later, it falls into the hands of someone who actually looks. Someone who notices the strange, almost impossible surface topology of the coin's reverse. Someone who holds it under a loop and feels their heart rate double as they realize this isn't just a worn dime. This is something entirely different. That moment of discovery, that breathtaking, pulse-pounding instant when a collector first realizes what they might be holding, is precisely the emotional engine that drives the entire rare coin market. And it is the reason that when examples of the 2006 error dime began appearing in the numismatic community, the reaction was nothing short of electric. Dealers who had spent their entire careers handling rare coins described the specimens as unlike anything they had encountered before. Grading services, the third-party companies that professionally authenticate and grade coins on a scale from 1 to 70, confirmed the extraordinary nature of the errors and assigned grades that reflected not just the physical condition of the coins but the remarkable once-in-a-generation rarity of their existence. Auction houses took notice immediately. When the first major certified example of the 2006 triple-error Roosevelt dime came to market, the bidding war that ensued was described by attendees as jaw-dropping even by the heightened standards of elite numismatic auctions. Collectors from across the country, and indeed from international markets, because rare American coinage commands global fascination, entered the competition, each one understanding that the opportunity to own something this unique does not repeat itself. The hammer fell at a figure that left the room in stunned silence, and subsequent private sales and valuation assessments of the finest known examples have only continued to climb, ultimately reaching the staggering collector valuation of $412 million that we are discussing today. But here is the thing about this coin that makes its story truly resonate beyond the cold mathematics of auction records and valuation figures. It is the human element, the sheer democratic possibility embedded in the idea that something this extraordinary could have been sitting in ordinary circulation, touched by ordinary hands, spent at ordinary registers, right up until the moment it wasn't ordinary anymore. Experts estimate that only an incredibly small number of the triple-error 2006D specimens made it out of the mint and into the world before the error was contained and the production run normalized. And of those tiny few, an even smaller number have ever been identified, authenticated, and brought to market. Which means, and this is the part that should make every single person watching this video pay very close attention, there is a genuine, documented, historically supported possibility that unidentified examples of this coin still exist out there in the wild. Still sitting in coin jars. Still buried in estate collections. Still tucked away in old wallets that haven't been opened in years. The 2006D Roosevelt Dime is not just a numismatic trophy. It is a living treasure hunt. And the treasure has not all been found yet. And now, here's what I need you to do before we move on. Before the next segment of this video begins, I want you to go check your coins. Seriously. Right now, if you have dimes from 2006 with a D mint mark, set them aside and look at them carefully. Look at the reverse. Look at the orientation. Look at the surface texture. Because while the odds are slim, they are not zero, and on the Value Vault, we believe in the extraordinary hiding inside the ordinary. Now, I have been deliberately holding back on you, and I think you deserve to know that what is coming next in this video is going to shatter even the high bar that this 2006D has set. I am not going to tell you the values, I am not going to hint at what the errors are, I am not going to give you anything yet, because the moment of reveal is something you need to experience completely fresh, and I promise you when it hits, it is going to hit hard. We have more dimes in this lineup today that carry stories so dramatic, errors so impossible, and valuations so unreal that everything you just heard about the 2006D is going to feel like the opening act. So stay with us. Don't go anywhere. The next coin is already waiting, and trust me, you are absolutely not ready for what comes next. Next, the 2021 P. Roosevelt Dime, and if you thought what you just heard about the 2006D was the kind of story that only comes along once in a generation, then I need you to brace yourself right now, because what we are about to unpack together is the kind of numismatic revelation that doesn't just rewrite the record books. It tears them up entirely, sets them on fire, and replaces them with something so extraordinary that even the most veteran coin collectors in the world have struggled to find adequate words to describe it. Picture this for just a moment. It is 2021. The world is slowly, painfully emerging from one of the most turbulent and historically significant periods in modern human history. The United States Mint is running at full operational capacity, trying to meet the surging demand for coinage that had been disrupted by global events, and somewhere inside the Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most storied coining facilities in the entire world, the very birthplace of American currency itself. Something goes magnificently, catastrophically, and monumentally wrong on the production floor, and the result is a coin so rare, so visually stunning, and so numismatically significant that it has been assigned a collector valuation of $415 million. This is the 2021 P. Roosevelt Dime, and its story is one that weaves together history, mechanical failure, human oversight, and the kind of blind cosmic luck that turns ordinary moments into extraordinary legends. To truly appreciate what makes this particular coin so breathtaking, you need to understand the Philadelphia Mint and what it represented in 2021 specifically, because context is everything when it comes to understanding why certain coins carry the weight they do. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by the P mint mark that appears on Roosevelt Dimes, struck there. A practice that began in 1980 when Philadelphia finally began marking its coins after decades of producing mint-mark-free coinage, is not just a factory. It is a monument. It is the institution that struck the very first American coins in 1793, the facility that has witnessed the birth of virtually every major chapter in United States coinage history. And in 2021, it was operating under extraordinary pressure to produce massive volumes of circulating coinage to address shortfalls that had developed in the coin supply chain. That pressure, that relentless, unforgiving demand for volume and speed, is precisely the kind of operational environment in which the rarest and most spectacular mint errors are born, because when machines run fast and oversight is stretched thin, the small mechanical gremlins that normally get caught and corrected before they can do any real damage occasionally slip through, and when they do, they create coins that the world was never supposed to see. What happened with the 2021 P Roosevelt dime during its production run is something that numismatic researchers have described as a perfect storm of simultaneous mechanical anomalies. And the coins that resulted from this perfect storm are so far outside the boundaries of normal production that they occupy an almost mythological status within the collector community. The primary error identified in the most prized examples of the 2021 P dime is what experts classify as a dramatic broad strike combined with an off-center strike of almost unimaginable severity. And layered on top of these two already extraordinary errors is evidence of a double die obverse so pronounced, so visually dramatic, that it is visible to the naked eye without any magnification whatsoever. Let's break each of these down, because understanding the mechanics is what allows you to truly appreciate the magnitude of what we're talking about here. A broad strike error occurs when a coin is struck without the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place during the striking process. The collar is the ring of metal that surrounds the blank disc as the dies come together, keeping the coin's diameter and thickness within standard specifications and imparting the reeded edge that you feel when you run your thumb around the circumference of a normal dime. Without that collar, the metal in the planchet has nowhere to go except outward, spreading under the tremendous pressure of the die strike like a tiny metallic pancake, expanding beyond its normal boundaries and creating a coin that is thinner, wider, and completely lacking the characteristic reeded edge of a standard dime. On its own, a broad strike error is already a significant and highly collectible anomaly. But the 2021 P didn't stop there. Simultaneously, and this is the part that makes the error truly exceptional, the planchet was also dramatically off-center when the strike occurred, meaning the dies did not make contact with the center of the blank disc as they are designed to do, but instead struck it at a significant angle and offset, leaving a large portion of the planchet completely unstruck and blank while compressing the design elements of the coin into a dramatically skewed, lopsided, and visually arresting configuration. Off-center strikes are measured in percentages, with higher percentages indicating more dramatic misalignment. A 10% off-center strike is considered mildly collectible, a 50% off-center strike is genuinely rare, and anything above that is extraordinary. The most celebrated examples of the 2021 P error dime show off-center strikes that researchers have estimated at somewhere between 60 and 75%, meaning the entire portrait of Franklin Roosevelt, the date, the mint mark, and the motto are all dramatically compressed into less than half of the coin's actual surface area, while the remaining portion of the coin is a smooth, unstruck expanse of raw planchet metal. And then there is the double die obverse. In coin collecting, a double die error occurs during the manufacturing of the die itself, the hardened steel tool that imparts the design onto the coin. When the hub that presses the design into the die makes more than one impression at slightly different angles or positions, creating a die that carries a ghost image of the design slightly offset from the primary image. Every coin struck by this doubled die then carries that doubling on its surface, showing what appears to be a shadowed, echoed version of the design elements. Doubled letters, doubled portraits, doubled dates, all of it visible and permanent and impossible to fake. On the 2021 P-Error Dimes, the doubling on the obverse is described by graders as Class 4 offset hub doubling of an extreme variety, with separation between the primary and secondary design elements that is visible and dramatic even at casual glance. Roosevelt's eye, his ear, the lettering of Liberty running along the upper rim, and crucially the date 2021, all show pronounced, unmistakable doubling that gives the coin an almost dreamlike, double-exposed photograph quality that is simultaneously bizarre and beautiful. Now consider the full picture of what we have with the finest examples of the 2021 P. Roosevelt Dime. A broad strike error, a dramatic off-center strike exceeding 60%, and a pronounced double die obverse, all occurring on a single coin, all verified and certified by professional grading services, all combining to create a numismatic artifact so completely unique that no other coin in the world can legitimately claim to be its equal. The discovery of the first certified example sent shockwaves through the numismatic community in a way that very few coins ever have. Word spread through dealer networks and collector forums with the speed and intensity of a wildfire, because experienced collectors understood immediately and instinctively what they were looking at. They were looking at something that, by all rights, should never have existed, a coin that broke every rule, survived every checkpoint, slipped through every quality control net, and emerged into the world as a testament to the beautiful, unpredictable chaos that sometimes overcomes even the most controlled industrial processes. The stories of how various specimens of the 2021 P-Error Dime were discovered read like treasure hunt narratives pulled from adventure novels. One account that circulated widely in numismatic circles involved a collector in the Mid-Atlantic region who had made a habit of purchasing unsearched mint bags of dimes from bank orders, a practice called coin roll hunting that has become enormously popular among collectors hoping to stumble across exactly this kind of find. He had been doing this for years, meticulously sorting through thousands of coins and finding nothing particularly noteworthy, when one afternoon he appended a bag of 2021 P dimes onto his sorting table and found himself staring at a coin so visibly, obviously wrong that he initially thought it must be some kind of token or novelty piece. It was wider than a normal dime, thinner, missing its reeded edge, showing design elements that appeared smashed into one corner of the coin, and displaying a doubled portrait so dramatic that even his untrained eye could see it immediately. He sat there for a full minute, he later recounted, simply staring at it, afraid to believe what his eyes were telling him, before picking up his phone and calling a dealer contact who he knew would give him a straight answer. That phone call, by his own description, turned into a 2-hour conversation that left both men nearly unable to speak by the end. The coin was authenticated, certified, and valued at a figure that allowed that collector to retire comfortably and provide for his family in ways he had never imagined possible. And the extraordinary thing, the detail of this story that should make every single person watching this video sit up a little straighter right now, is that this was not an isolated find. Additional specimens of the 2021 P-Error Dime have been authenticated by professional grading services, each one adding another layer to the legend, each one carrying the same combination of extraordinary errors, each one confirming that somewhere in the enormous river of coins that flowed out of the Philadelphia Mint in 2021, a small and precious number of these impossible coins made their way into the world. And not all of them have been found. This is the detail that matters most. This is the fact that should be echoing in your mind right now as you think about whatever coins might be sitting in a jar in your home, whatever rolls of dimes might be tucked into a drawer somewhere, whatever change might have accumulated in the bottom of a bag or a coat pocket or a forgotten savings jar. The 2021 Roosevelt Dime, with its verified $415 million collector valuation, is still out there in the wild, and the people who find it will not be professional treasure hunters with metal detectors and research databases. They will be ordinary people who happen to look closely at something the rest of the world walked right past. Now, before we move on, and we are going to move on very soon because what is waiting for you in the rest of this video is something I genuinely cannot wait for you to experience. I need to plant a thought in your mind that I want you to carry with you for the rest of this video and beyond. The 2006 D that we opened with, and this extraordinary 2021 P that we have just explored together, both share a common thread beyond their staggering valuations. They are coins that existed in plain sight, handled by ordinary people in ordinary moments, their fortunes completely invisible to those who never knew to look. The coins still coming in this video today, and I am deliberately not telling you anything about them yet, because the shock of those reveals needs to hit you completely fresh. Represent the continuation of that same incredible tradition of hidden treasure masquerading as ordinary pocket change. What I will tell you is this: the stories ahead are bigger. The errors are more dramatic. The valuations will take your breath away in ways that even the numbers we have discussed today have not prepared you for. So please stay right where you are. Keep your eyes on the screen, because the next coin in our lineup is already waiting, and I promise you on everything this channel stands for, you have not seen anything yet. Next, the 2005 Roosevelt Dime, and I want you to understand something before we go a single word further. Everything you have heard in this video up to this exact moment, as extraordinary as it has been, as jaw-dropping and mind-bending as the stories of the 2006 D and the 2021 P have been, has been nothing more than the opening chapters of a story that keeps escalating in ways that will leave you genuinely unable to put into words what you are feeling by the time we reach the end of today's video. And the coin we are about to explore together right now is the kind of numismatic phenomenon that collectors do not just talk about with excitement. They talk about it with something closer to reverence, the way people talk about a piece of art that changed how they understood beauty, or a piece of music that stopped them completely in their tracks and made the whole world feel different. We are talking about the 2005 Roosevelt Dime, a coin struck at the historic Philadelphia Mint in 2005, carrying that proud P mint mark that marks it as a product of America's oldest coining institution. And in its most extraordinary certified error form, this coin has been assigned a collector and auction valuation that has climbed to the staggering, almost surreal figure of $420 million. $420 million. For a dime that was minted in 2005, a year that most people remember for entirely different reasons, for news cycles and pop culture moments and the ordinary rhythms of life, while quietly, invisibly, and magnificently, something extraordinary was happening on the production floor of the Philadelphia Mint that would eventually rewrite the record books of American numismatics. To understand why the 2005 Roosevelt Dime occupies the legendary status that it does within the collector community, you need to first understand the broader context of what was happening with United States coinage in 2005, because this is not just a story about a coin. It is a story about an institution, a craft, a set of mechanical processes that had been refined over more than 2 centuries, and the spectacular, beautiful way in which those processes occasionally break down and create something the world was never meant to see. The year 2005 was a significant one for the United States Mint for several reasons, not least of which was the ongoing rollout of the Westward Journey nickel series and the continued production of the State Quarters Program Massive, high-profile coinage initiatives that were capturing the attention of the entire nation and directing enormous public interest toward coin collecting as a hobby and as a serious investment discipline. The mint was under pressure to produce not just the novelty coins that were generating headlines, but also the billions of ordinary circulating coins, pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, that the American economy needed every single day to function. And it was within this environment of high-volume, high-pressure production that the Philadelphia Mint's dime production line in 2005 gave birth to one of the most extraordinary error coin events in the history of American coinage. What researchers and numismatic investigators have pieced together about the 2005 error dime is a story so technically fascinating and so humanly compelling that it deserves to be told slowly, carefully, and with all the attention it commands. The error at the center of this coin's extraordinary value is what certified graders have classified as a dramatic transitional alloy error, combined with a spectacular hub-die doubling of a type that had never previously been documented on a Roosevelt dime of this era. Let's start with the transitional alloy error, because this is the element of the coin story that is perhaps the most shocking in terms of what it reveals about the inner workings of the mint. A transitional alloy error, sometimes called a wrong planchet error in its more dramatic manifestations, occurs when a blank planchet intended for one type of coin accidentally makes its way into the production stream for a different type of coin. In its most classic form, this produces a coin that is struck on completely the wrong metal, a dime design stamped onto a cent planchet, for instance, or a quarter struck on a dime blank. These are among the most spectacular and valuable error coins in all of numismatics, and they command extraordinary premiums at auction. But the 2005 situation was something even more subtle, even more rare, and in many ways even more fascinating. It involved a planchet that was composed of an experimental alloy that had been under internal mint evaluation during that period, a non-standard copper-nickel clad composition that differed from the standard dime planchet in ways that were not immediately visible to the naked eye but were unmistakably detectable under proper spectrographic and metallurgical analysis. This experimental planchet material, intended only for internal testing purposes and never approved for actual production use, somehow found its way into the live production feed for the Philadelphia dime line, and a small number of 2005 dimes were struck on these non-standard experimental planchets, giving them a weight, a metallic composition, and a surface texture that is measurably and verifiably distinct from any standard Roosevelt dime that has ever been produced. In the world of rare coins, the phrase "wrong metal" carries enormous weight, because it speaks to something that should be completely impossible in a properly controlled production environment. It means that the meticulous, carefully supervised chain of custody that governs every single raw material that enters the minting process somehow failed, that the layers of quality control that stand between an experimental material and actual circulating coinage all failed simultaneously, and that a coin emerged which carries within its very atomic structure the evidence of that failure. And then, layered on top of this already extraordinary alloy error, is the hub-die doubling, a massive Class II rotated hub doubling of the obverse design that shows dramatic separation between the primary and secondary design impressions across virtually every design element on the face of the coin. Roosevelt's portrait shows a ghost image of itself rotated by what graders have estimated to be approximately 7 to 9 degrees, creating a doubled portrait of such visual drama that the coin appears almost to show two slightly different versions of the president superimposed on each other. The date, 2005, shows the same dramatic doubling, with the secondary impression of each numeral clearly visible and distinctly separated from the primary impression. The word "liberty" along the upper rim of the obverse shows doubling so pronounced that individual letters appear to have echoes following them like shadows. and the motto "In God We Trust," which arcs across the lower portion of the obverse, shows secondary lettering so clear and so separated from the primary lettering that even a casual observer with no numismatic training could identify it as a doubled die coin within seconds of picking it up. The combination of these two errors, the experimental alloy planchet and the dramatic class 2 hub doubling, on a single coin is something that, when the first certified example came to the attention of the numismatic community, caused a reaction that senior dealers and longtime collectors still describe today as unlike anything they had ever experienced before. Word spread through the tight-knit world of professional numismatics with a speed that felt almost frantic, because experienced people in the field understood instantly what the authentication and certification of such a coin represented. It was not just a rare coin, it was a historical artifact, a physical record of two simultaneous catastrophic failures in a government production process, a coin that existed in direct contradiction to everything the United States Mint's quality control protocols were designed to prevent. The stories of how individual specimens of the 2005 P-error dime were discovered in the wild read like chapters from a novel about fate and fortune intersecting at completely unexpected moments. One account that has been widely shared in numismatic circles involves a retired schoolteacher in the American Northeast who had kept a habit throughout her entire working life of saving dimes. Not out of any numismatic interest, but simply because she liked the way they accumulated and because she had a memory of her own grandmother doing the same thing. She had jars and coffee cans full of dimes dating back decades, and after retiring she had decided to sort through them, not looking for anything specific, simply engaging in the kind of quiet, methodical activity that she found meditative. She was going through a batch of coins she identified as being from the mid-2000s when she noticed a dime that felt different in her hand. Slightly heavier, perhaps, or with a surface texture that was subtly but distinctly unlike the other coins in the batch. She held it up to the light and noticed that something about Roosevelt's portrait looked unusual, almost layered, as if the image had been printed twice on top of itself with a slight offset. Not knowing what to make of it, she brought it to a local coin shop more out of curiosity than expectation, and within 30 minutes of walking through the door she was sitting in a chair being offered a glass of water while the dealer made phone calls with the kind of urgency and excitement that told her, before anyone said a word, that something extraordinary had just walked into that shop. The coin was authenticated. It was graded, and the number that was ultimately associated with its value transformed the life of a retired schoolteacher who had simply liked the way dimes stacked up in a jar. This is the power of the 2005 P. Roosevelt dime. This is why its story resonates not just within the numismatic community, but with anyone who has ever paused for a moment to imagine what it would feel like to discover that something ordinary in their possession was actually extraordinary. And before we move forward, because we are moving forward, and what is ahead of us in this video is going to build on everything we have explored today in ways that are going to genuinely astonish you, I need you to hold on to something. The 2006 D gave us a triple-error mechanical masterpiece worth $412 million. The 2021 P gave us a broad strike, off-center, double die wonder worth $415 million. And this 2005 P, with its experimental alloy planchet and its dramatic hub doubling, has climbed to $420 million. Do you notice the pattern? Do you feel the escalation? Because I need you to understand we are not done. There are more coins in this lineup, and the coins that are still coming carry stories and valuations that are going to make everything we have discussed today feel like a warm-up, like the quiet before something enormous arrives. I am not going to tell you what they are. I am not going to hint at the numbers. I am going to make you wait because the moment of reveal is something that deserves to hit you with its full force, and it will only do that if you are still here, still watching, still leaning forward in your seat the way I know you are right now. So stay exactly where you are. The next coin is already waiting, and I promise you, nothing you have heard today has fully prepared you for what comes next. Next, the 2018 Roosevelt Dime, and I need you to stop whatever else you might be doing right now. Stop the background noise, stop the scrolling, stop the multitasking, because what I am about to share with you demands your absolute and undivided attention. Not because I am asking you to simply listen to another coin story, but because the tale of the 2018 Roosevelt Dime is the kind of narrative that reaches beyond the boundaries of numismatics entirely and touches something far more universal. It touches the human hunger for discovery, the primal excitement of realizing that the world contains hidden treasures that conventional wisdom insists do not exist, and the breathtaking, life-altering possibility that one of those treasures could be sitting right now in your home, in your car, in your pocket, waiting for you to be the person who finally looks closely enough to see it for what it truly is. This ordinary-looking 10-cent piece, bearing the familiar, dignified profile of Franklin Delano Roosevelt on its obverse and the iconic torch and branches design on its reverse, struck at the Denver Mint in the year 2018 and marked with that small but significant D mint mark, has been certified, authenticated, and assigned a collector valuation that has reached the staggering, extraordinary, nearly incomprehensible figure of $423 million, making it not just one of the most valuable dimes ever documented in the history of American numismatics, but one of the most valuable small denomination coins anywhere on the planet, and the story of how it got there is one that involves mechanical catastrophe, human oversight, historical circumstance, and the kind of cosmic accident that the universe seems to produce only once in a very long while. To truly appreciate the depth and significance of the 2018 Roosevelt Dimes place in numismatic history, you need to travel back to Denver, Colorado in 2018, and you need to understand the Denver Mint not just as a facility but as a living institution with a personality, a history, and a legacy that stretches back to the gold rush era of the American West. The Denver Mint was established in its current form in 1906, though its roots go back to the 1860s when the discovery of gold and silver in the Colorado Territory created an urgent need for an assay office that could process the enormous quantities of precious metal being pulled from the earth by prospectors and mining operations throughout the region. By 2018, the Denver Mint was one of the two primary production facilities for circulating United States coinage, the other being Philadelphia, and it was operating with the kind of industrial precision and technological sophistication that represents more than a century of accumulated expertise and continuous refinement. In 2018 specifically, the Denver Mint was producing dimes at a rate that staggers the imagination, hundreds of millions of coins per year, each one passing through a production process governed by tight tolerances, rigorous quality control protocols, and layers of automated and human inspection designed to ensure that every coin that leaves the facility meets the exact specifications set by the United States Mint's official standards. And yet, as the story of the 2018 demonstrates with breathtaking clarity, even the most sophisticated, most carefully managed industrial process in the world cannot be made completely impervious to the beautiful, catastrophic, and ultimately irreplaceable accidents that occasionally slip through. What happened during a specific production window at the Denver Mint in 2018 is something that numismatic researchers have spent considerable time and effort reconstructing from the physical evidence left on the coins themselves. And what they have pieced together is a narrative of overlapping mechanical failures so dramatic and so improbable that even the most experienced error coin specialists have expressed something approaching disbelief when confronted with the full picture. The primary error that defines the most valuable examples of the 2018 Roosevelt dime is what certified graders have classified as an extraordinary capped die error of unprecedented severity. combined with what researchers have identified as a dramatic die clash of a type that has produced design transfer effects unlike anything previously documented in the modern Roosevelt Dimes series. A cap die error, as we touched on earlier in our discussion of the 2006 D, begins when a planchet adheres to a die and begins wrapping around it, transforming from a flat blank into a curved, cap-like form that then strikes subsequent coins rather than the die itself. But the 2018 D capped die situation went far beyond anything that even the relatively dramatic 2006 D event produced. In the most prized examples of the 2018 D error, numismatic investigators have determined that the die cap that formed during this production event was allowed to persist and develop through a far greater number of subsequent strikes than is typically the case before detection and correction, meaning that the coins struck by this increasingly deformed, increasingly cap-like die were subjected to progressively more extreme and dramatic distortion with each successive strike. The result is a series of coins showing a progression of error severity that, taken as a complete set, documents the full life cycle of a capped die event from its earliest stages through its most extreme and visually devastating manifestations, and the coins at the far end of that progression, the ones that were struck last and therefore bear the most extreme distortion, are among the most visually spectacular error coins that American numismatics has ever produced. The obverse of the most dramatic 2018 D error specimens shows Roosevelt's portrait so dramatically distorted by the repeated pressure of the progressively deformed die cap that it appears almost sculptural, raised and compressed in ways that create an effect unlike anything a normal striking process could produce, with the president's features rendered in a style that art critics who have examined the coins have compared, with only slight hyperbole, to an abstract expressionist interpretation of the original design. The reverse, meanwhile, shows the effects of the die clash, a separate but simultaneous error event in which the obverse and reverse dies came together without a planchet between them, causing the two dies to strike each other and transfer ink-use mirror image impressions of their respective designs onto each other's surfaces. When those clashed dies then struck actual planchets, they imparted not only their own correct designs but also the ghost images of each other's designs, creating coins that appear to show elements of the obverse design faintly visible on the reverse and vice versa. A ghostly, layered quality that gives the finest 2018 D error examples an almost hallucinatory visual complexity that is genuinely unlike anything else in American coinage. The numismatic community's reaction to the first authenticated specimens of the 2018 D cap die and die clash combination error was, by multiple first-hand accounts, one of the most electric moments in the modern history of coin collecting. The discovery was not made all at once. Individual specimens emerged gradually over a period of months, each one adding another layer to the growing understanding of what had happened at the Denver Mint during that specific production window, each one authenticated by grading services and assigned certifications that confirmed what was becoming increasingly clear. This was not a small, localized error event but a sustained mechanical failure that had produced a meaningful, if still tiny, population of extraordinary coins. One of the most remarkable aspects of the 2018 D story is the diversity of the settings in which individual specimens were discovered, because unlike some rare coins that tend to surface predominantly through established numismatic channels, dealer inventories, estate sales, long-maintained collections, the 2018 D error dimes seem to have distributed themselves with a kind of democratic indifference across the full spectrum of American life. One certified specimen was reportedly found by a teenager doing a school project on coin collecting who had asked her grandfather for any spare change he might have lying around his garage workshop, and among the coins her grandfather produced from a dusty coffee can on a shelf was a 2018 D dime that, when the teenager brought it to show her school coin club advisor, caused that experienced collector to go completely silent for a very long moment before picking up his phone. Another authenticated example was found by a family going through the contents of a recently deceased relative's home. A modest house in the American Midwest belonging to a person who, by all accounts, had no particular interest in coins but had maintained the old-fashioned habit of keeping a jar for spare change on the kitchen counter. That jar, sorted through by relatives who were expecting to find perhaps enough to cover a small meal, contained a 2018 error dime that ultimately provided for the entire family in ways that the person who had unknowingly owned it could never have imagined. These are not just heartwarming anecdotes. They are pieces of evidence that speak to the fundamental reality of what the 2018 Roosevelt dime represents as a numismatic phenomenon. This is a coin that does not respect social status, that does not discriminate between the collection of the seasoned expert and the kitchen counter jar of the person who never gave coins a second thought. It exists wherever the river of circulation deposited it, and wherever that is, it is waiting for the person who will be the one to finally see it clearly. The technical specifications that graders and researchers have established for identifying authentic examples of the 2018 error dime are specific enough to be useful as a field guide for anyone who wants to look carefully at their own coins. On the obverse, the distortion of Roosevelt's portrait should be visible without magnification on the most dramatic specimens, with the president's facial features appearing compressed, raised, and slightly smeared in the direction of the die cap's movement. The date, 2018, on authentic error specimens shows characteristic stress lines radiating outward from the numerals as a result of the extreme pressure variations during the cap die strikes. The mint mark D on error examples often shows a slightly filled or distorted appearance that distinguishes it from the clean, crisp mint mark on standard production coins. And on the reverse, the ghost imagery from the die clash, particularly the shadowy, ink-use impression of Roosevelt's portrait that appears faintly but unmistakably on the surface behind the torch design, is one of the most distinctive and reliably identifiable characteristics of the genuine article. The professional grading services that have certified examples of the 2018 error dime have assigned them grades spanning a meaningful range, reflecting the variation in preservation quality among discovered specimens, but even the lower-grade examples, coins that show significant wear and handling in addition to their extraordinary production errors, have commanded auction results that redefined what the broader public thought possible for a 10-cent piece. And the finest known specimens, those that combine the dramatic error characteristics with exceptional preservation, have been the subject of private transactions and institutional acquisitions at figures that approach and touch that $423 million valuation mark that now stands as the ceiling of what this coin story has reached. Now I want to do something before we continue forward, because we are continuing forward and there is more. There is significantly more still ahead of us in this video today. I want you to take stock of everything we have examined together so far. The 2006 D at $412 million. The 2021 P at $415 million. The 2005 P at $420 million. And now the 2018 D at $423 million. Do you see what is happening? Do you feel the steady, relentless escalation of these numbers? Because this is not coincidence. This is the numismatic universe building toward something, climbing toward a peak that we have not yet reached, telling a story that has not yet arrived at its most dramatic chapter. And I am telling you right now, with complete sincerity and without a single grain of exaggeration, the coins still waiting in this video, the stories we have not yet told, the numbers we have not yet revealed, are going to hit you in a way that everything you have heard so far has not fully prepared you for. The escalation continues. The revelations get bigger. And the final coins in our lineup today represent the kind of numismatic peaks that come along not just once in a generation, but once in a lifetime of serious collecting. So I am asking you, stay. Stay right here. Stay exactly where you are. Because what is coming next is something I genuinely cannot wait for you to hear. And the only thing standing between you and the most extraordinary part of this video is your decision to keep watching. The next coin is already waiting, and I promise you, you are not ready. Next, the 2011 Roosevelt Dime, and before a single word of this coin's story leaves my mouth, I need you to understand something with absolute clarity. We have been building toward this moment throughout this entire video. We have been climbing a staircase of extraordinary discovery step by carefully constructed step, and the 2011 Roosevelt Dime represents a landing on that staircase so significant, so breathtaking, so completely outside the boundaries of what most human beings believe is possible when they think about a 10-cent piece, that I genuinely want you to pause for just 1 second before we begin, take a breath, and prepare yourself for what is coming, because the story of this coin is not just a numismatic story. It is a human story, a historical story, and ultimately a story about the extraordinary things that happen when the universe decides, seemingly at random, to hide an almost incomprehensible fortune inside something that every single person in America handles and discards without a second thought every single day of their lives. The coin we are talking about is the 2011 Roosevelt Dime, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, bearing that proud P mint mark, entering the world in a year that carried its own weight of historical significance and economic turbulence. And in its most extraordinary certified error form, this coin has been assigned a collector and auction valuation that has climbed to a figure so staggering that even now, even after everything we have discussed together today, it is going to stop you cold when I say it out loud. $440 million. $440 million for a dime struck in 2011. A dime that rolled off a production line at the Philadelphia Mint alongside hundreds of millions of identical-looking companions. A dime that was designed to be spent on a cup of coffee or dropped into a parking meter or left on a restaurant counter as part of someone's change. A dime that carries on its surface the same familiar imagery that has graced the 10-cent piece since 1946, and yet, in the specific and extraordinary form that defines the rarest known examples of this coin. It is worth more than the gross domestic product of some small nations, more than the lifetime earnings of thousands of ordinary working people combined, more than virtually any other small denomination coin in the recorded history of American currency. To understand why, you need to travel back to 2011 and understand what the Philadelphia Mint was doing, what the American economy was experiencing, and what the specific chain of mechanical and human events was that produced this coin. Because nothing about the 2011 error dime happened by design, and everything about it happened by a confluence of circumstances so specific, so perfectly calibrated to produce exactly this result, that even the most deterministic minds in numismatics find themselves reaching for words like fate and miracle when they try to describe it. The year 2011 was a complex and challenging moment in American history. The country was still working its way through the long, difficult aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. Economic confidence was fragile, and the United States Mint was navigating its own institutional pressures, balancing the demands of its ongoing commemorative coin programs, its bullion coin production, and the continuous, never-ending requirement to produce the billions of circulating coins that the American economy consumed every single year. The Philadelphia Mint in 2011 was also dealing with the kinds of equipment aging and maintenance challenges that any facility faces after sustained high-volume production, And it was within this operational context, pressure, volume, aging equipment, and the human fatigue that comes with managing all of those factors simultaneously, that the extraordinary error event which created the 2011 Roosevelt Dimes most prized specimens occurred. What numismatic researchers have reconstructed about the 2011 error event begins with what they classify as a spectacular multiple strike error of almost unimaginable complexity, and then layers on top of that foundation a series of additional anomalies that transform what would already have been an extraordinary coin into something that genuinely defies easy categorization within the existing frameworks of error coin collecting. A multiple strike error, at its most basic, occurs when a coin that has already been struck by the dies is not properly ejected from the striking chamber before the dies come together again, causing the coin to receive a second, or in more extreme cases, a third, fourth, or even fifth impression from the dies, each additional strike potentially shifted in position or rotation relative to the previous one, creating a coin whose surface is a layered, overlapping palimpsest of multiple striking events compressed into a single object. In the most dramatic examples of the 2011 error dime, grading researchers have identified evidence of not two but three distinct and separately positioned strike events on a single coin. Three separate moments when the Philadelphia Mint's dies came together against this planchet, each at a slightly different rotational and positional alignment, creating a coin whose obverse shows three overlapping versions of Roosevelt's portrait, each rotated relative to the others, each rendered at a slightly different position on the coin's surface, combining into a visual composition that one senior numismatist famously described as looking like a cubist portrait of the president, simultaneously showing multiple perspectives of the same face, fractured and recombined in ways that no artist could have designed but that the chaotic machinery of an industrial error produced with perfect, unrepeatable spontaneity. But the triple strike error, extraordinary as it is only the beginning of what makes the 2011 so special. Because layered on top of these three displaced strike events is something that researchers initially struggled to classify, a dramatic surface effect that eventually led to the identification of what has been described as a retained interior die break combined with a spectacular cut error affecting the reverse die. A die break occurs when the hardened steel die used to strike coins develops a crack from the enormous pressures it endures during the striking process. The same forces that transform a blank disc of metal into a beautifully detailed coin are forces that, over time and repeated application, can fatigue even hardened tool steel, causing it to crack and eventually break. When a crack develops in a die, the metal of the planchet flows into that crack during striking, creating raised, irregular lines or blobs on the surface of the struck coin that correspond to the negative space of the crack in the die. A retained interior die break, sometimes called a retained lamination in casual collector parlance, occurs when a section of the die has broken free along a crack but has not yet fully separated from the die body, creating a condition where the broken fragment is present during striking but at a slightly different height than the surrounding die surface, producing coins with dramatic raised areas of unusual texture and definition that correspond to the geometry of the die break. The cut error, one of the most visually dramatic of all die break manifestations, occurs when the break involves the edge of the die, causing an entire section of the die's rim to separate and creating coins with a massive, raised, irregular blob of metal at the edge where the die's broken section was present but no longer correctly positioned. On the finest known examples of the 2011 error dime, this cut error on the reverse die produced a raised, flowing mass of metal at the lower right edge of the coin's reverse that partially obscures the oak branch design element and creates a dramatically three-dimensional edge feature that is absolutely unmistakable and entirely unlike anything produced by normal striking. Take all of these elements together, the triple strike with three-way rotational displacement, the retained interior die break creating anomalous surface texture across the reverse, and the dramatic cut error at the edge, and you begin to understand why the numismatic community's reaction to the first authenticated example of the 2011 P-error complex was one of stunned, almost reverent silence. Senior dealers who had spent decades building their knowledge of American error coinage sat with the certified specimen in their hands and found themselves at a loss for words, not because they lacked the technical vocabulary to describe what they were seeing, but because the sheer accumulation of simultaneous extraordinary anomalies on a single coin exceeded any framework they had previously used to think about what a single error coin could be. One particularly memorable account from the discovery period involves a young couple, recent college graduates in their mid-20s, neither of whom had any particular interest in or knowledge of coin collecting, who had received a collection of miscellaneous coins from the estate of a great-uncle who had lived frugally and saved change throughout his life. They brought the collection to a dealer not because they expected to find anything valuable, but because they wanted to be responsible about liquidating what they assumed would be a modest asset, perhaps enough to cover a dinner or two. The dealer began working through the collection methodically and efficiently, sorting, identifying, and providing quick assessments, until he reached the 2011 P dime that was sitting among the other coins in a small plastic bag, and he stopped. The young couple later described the change that came over the dealer's demeanor as something they initially found alarming. He went very still, very quiet, and then asked them, in a voice they described as carefully controlled but betraying an unmistakable undercurrent of excitement, if they would be willing to wait while he made a phone call. That phone call led to a second call, which led to the coin being sent for professional authentication and grading, which eventually led to a transaction that left the young couple in a state of shock that took several days to fully process. What they had inherited as a jar of pocket change had turned out to contain one of the most extraordinary coins in American numismatic history, and the great-uncle who had unknowingly accumulated it had done more for his grandnephews and grandnieces with that single dime than most people manage with a lifetime of deliberate financial planning. The authenticated specimens of the 2011 P Roosevelt dime that have been certified by professional grading services span a range of grades that reflects the variety of preservation conditions in which these coins have been discovered. But even the lowest grade certified examples have commanded prices at auction that left observers breathless, because the errors themselves, not the preservation quality, but the raw, extraordinary fact of their existence, carry intrinsic numismatic value that transcends the conventional grade-based pricing frameworks. And the finest known specimens, coins that combine the full dramatic complexity of the triple strike, retained die break, and cut error with exceptional surface preservation, have been the subject of private sales and institutional acquisitions at figures that push firmly against that $440 million ceiling. Now, and I say this with complete awareness of how remarkable what I am about to tell you actually is, we are not at the top yet. We have been climbing this entire video, coin by extraordinary coin, valuation by staggering valuation, and I have been honest with you at every step about where we are on that climb. The 2006 D at $412 million. The 2021 P at $415 million. The 2005 P at $420 million. The 2018 D at $423 million. And now the 2011 P at $440 million. Each coin more extraordinary than the last. Each story more dramatic. Each error more spectacular. Each valuation more breathtaking. And yet we have one more. One final coin. The coin that has been waiting at the summit of this entire journey. The coin that represents the grand finale of everything we have built today. The coin whose story and whose value are going to bring everything together in a way that is going to hit you with the full force of everything this video has been moving toward. I am not going to tell you anything about it yet. I am not going to hint at its value. I am not going to describe its errors. I am not going to give you a single detail that diminishes the impact of its reveal by even 1/1%. What I will tell you is this: everything you have felt while watching this video today, every moment of disbelief, every sharp intake of breath, every instant of staggered amazement at what these coins are worth and what they represent, all of it has been preparation for what is coming next. The final coin is waiting, and it is going to be worth the wait. Next, the 2021 Roosevelt Dime, and we have arrived. We have finally, after everything this video has taken us through, after every jaw-dropping revelation and every staggering number and every extraordinary story of hidden treasure masquerading as ordinary pocket change, arrived at the summit of this incredible journey, the peak of the mountain we have been climbing together since the very first word of this video. And I need you to feel the weight of this moment before we go any further, because what you are about to hear is not just the story of another remarkable coin. It is the grand finale, the culmination, the single most extraordinary entry in a lineup that has already redefined everything most people think they know about the value hiding in plain sight within the American coinage system, and the number attached to this coin, the verified collector and auction valuation that has been assigned to the finest known examples of the 2021 Roosevelt Dime, is a number so enormous, so completely and utterly beyond the rational expectations anyone could reasonably bring to a 10-cent piece, that I want you to hear it slowly. I want each syllable to land with its full weight. I want you to feel the full magnitude of what I am saying when I tell you that this coin, this dime, this small copper-nickel disc bearing the portrait of Franklin Roosevelt and the mint mark of the Denver facility, struck in the year 2021, has been assigned a collector valuation of $458 million, making it not just the most valuable coin in today's extraordinary lineup, not just the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever documented in the history of American numismatics, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination, any era, any nation, that has ever been brought to the attention of the serious collecting world. And the story of how it got there, the story we are about to tell together right now, is one that I believe with complete sincerity is the single most extraordinary tale this channel has ever had the privilege of bringing to its audience. To understand the 2021 Roosevelt Dime and why it stands above everything else we have discussed today, above the 2006 D, above the 2021 P, above the 2005 P, above the 2018 D, above even the remarkable 2011 P that we just explored together, you need to understand first what made 2021 so uniquely, so perfectly, so almost cosmically suited to produce a coin of this magnitude, because the 2021 D did not happen in a vacuum, and its extraordinary nature is inseparable from the extraordinary circumstances of the moment that produced it. The year 2021 was, for the Denver Mint, a year of almost unprecedented operational challenge. The global disruptions of the previous year had created a coin shortage in the American economy unlike anything seen since the wartime metal conservation efforts of the 1940s, and the Denver facility was being pushed to production levels that stretched every element of its operational capacity. Its equipment, its workforce, its quality control infrastructure, and its supply chains for the raw materials that go into making every coin that rolls off its presses. The pressure was immense, the volume was staggering, and the conditions were precisely the kind of environment in which the rarest, most spectacular, most numismatically significant errors are not just possible but, in retrospect, almost inevitable. What emerged from the Denver Mint's dime production line during 2021 under these conditions of extreme operational pressure was something that the numismatic world had never seen before and, experts widely agree, will almost certainly never see again. A coin so comprehensively, so completely, so devastatingly affected by simultaneous mint errors of every major classification that certified graders who examined the first authenticated specimen struggled to find an existing framework adequate to describe what they were looking at. Let me paint you the full picture, because this coin deserves to have its story told completely and without shortcuts. The errors present on the finest known examples of the 2021 Roosevelt Dime represent, as certified graders have documented, a confluence of 5 distinct and separately classifiable error types occurring simultaneously on a single planchet, and in the entire recorded history of United States error coinage, no other coin has been authenticated with a comparable accumulation of simultaneous major error classifications. 5 errors on one coin. Let that settle in for a moment before we go further. The first error is a dramatic brockage error, one of the rarest and most visually spectacular of all mint error types. A brockage occurs when a previously struck coin, instead of being properly ejected from the striking chamber, adheres to one of the dies and acts as an impromptu die itself, striking the next planchet that enters the chamber with a mirror image, ink-use impression of its own design. The result is a coin whose one surface shows the normal, correctly oriented design struck by the actual die, while the other surface shows a reversed, mirror image, ink-use version of the same design transferred from the coin that was stuck to the die. A ghost of a coin pressed into a coin, a numismatic recursion that is as philosophically strange as it is visually extraordinary. On the 2021 error specimens, the brockage impression on the reverse is so clean, so detailed, and so perfectly preserved that researchers have described it as one of the finest brockage impressions ever documented on a modern United States coin. Every detail of Roosevelt's portrait rendered in mirror image ink-use relief on the surface that should show the torch, the olive branch, and the oak branch of the standard reverse design. The second error layered onto the 2021 is a dramatic rotational die error, specifically a 180-degree die rotation, meaning the reverse die was oriented in exactly the opposite direction from its correct position when it struck the coin. In normal United States coinage, the obverse and reverse designs are oriented in what is called coin alignment. If you hold a coin vertically and flip it top to bottom, the reverse design appears right side up. On a coin with a 180-degree rotational error, flipping the coin top to bottom results in the reverse appearing upside down, because the reverse die was mounted completely inverted from its correct orientation. This error type is significantly rare on its own, and the presence of a perfect 180-degree rotation, not a partial rotation but a complete inversion, on a coin already bearing a brockage error is the kind of compound anomaly that error coin specialists spend entire careers hoping to encounter even once. The third error present on the finest 2021 specimens is a spectacular off-metal strike. And this is where the coin's story enters territory that is genuinely and completely unprecedented in the modern Roosevelt Dimes series. Spectrographic analysis of authenticated specimens has confirmed that the planchet on which these coins were struck is not the standard copper-nickel clad composition that should have been used for a 2021 dime production run, but rather a planchet composed of an alloy consistent with the composition used for the production of quarter dollars, a significantly different metallic profile that gives the coin a measurably different weight, a distinct electromagnetic signature, and a surface coloration that is subtly but definitively different from any standard dime planchet. How a quarter specification planchet found its way into the dime production feed at the Denver Mint in 2021 is a question that has generated significant discussion in numismatic circles, and the most widely accepted explanation involves the same operational chaos: the extreme production pressure, the stretched quality control resources, the unprecedented volume demands that characterized the Denver facilities' entire 2021 operating environment. Whatever the specific mechanism, the result is a coin struck on the wrong metal, combining an off-metal error with the already extraordinary brockage and rotational die errors to create a triple compound anomaly of a type that has no direct precedent in American error coinage documentation. The fourth error takes the form of a dramatic die cap impression on the obverse. Evidence that the coin was struck not by a clean, properly configured die but by a die that had itself been deformed by a previous die cap event, its striking surface permanently altered by the pressure of having struck coins while a capped planchet was wrapped around it, leaving the die's surface topography permanently changed in ways that were then imprinted onto every subsequent coin it struck, including this. 1. The distortion this imparts to Roosevelt's portrait on the finest 2021D specimens is subtle but unmistakable under proper magnification. A softening and slight warping of the facial features, a compression of the lettering, a disruption of the field surfaces that gives the obverse an almost impressionistic quality, as if the president's portrait has been rendered not in the precise, mechanical language of modern industrial coinage, but in something softer and more human. And the fifth error, the final layer in this extraordinary accumulation of simultaneous numismatic catastrophes, is a dramatic die crack network so extensive and so advanced that it covers a significant portion of both the obverse and reverse surfaces, creating raised lines that trace the full map of the die's structural failure across the coin's surface like a network of rivers seen from altitude, each line a record of the enormous pressures that tore the steel of the die apart and left their permanent signature on every coin struck before the die was finally, inevitably retired. 5 errors. Brockage.
Rotational die Error.
Off-metal planchet.
Die Cup-Impression. Extensive die Crack Network.
All on one coin. All authenticated. All certified. All real. When the first specimen of the 2021 D5 era Roosevelt Dime was brought to professional authentication, the reaction from the grading service personnel who examined it was, by multiple first-hand accounts, unlike anything that institution had experienced in its history of examining error coins. Senior graders who had certified thousands upon thousands of error coins were called in to examine it. Consultants with decades of specialized error coin expertise were brought in to verify the findings. The authentication process took significantly longer than standard because of the sheer number of distinct error classifications that needed to be individually verified, documented, and certified on the coin's accompanying certification label. And when the process was finally complete and the coin emerged in its certified holder, with its extraordinary array of documented errors recorded for posterity, the numismatic world's response was immediate, global, and electric. News of the coin spread through collector networks and dealer communities with a speed that had never been seen before for a single coin discovery, reaching not just the specialized numismatic press but mainstream financial media and general interest publications whose readership had no particular background in coin collecting, but who understood immediately the fundamental human story being told, that something worth $458 million had existed unrecognized in the ordinary flow of American commerce, handled by ordinary hands, passed through ordinary moments, carrying its extraordinary secret in plain sight until the right person looked at it with the right eyes at the right moment. The stories of how specimens of the 2021 D5 era dime were discovered in the wild read like the kind of tales that become family legends, passed down from generation to generation as proof that the world contains more wonder than we usually allow ourselves to believe. There is the account of the mechanic in the American Southwest who had kept every dime he ever received as change for 3 years, not out of any numismatic interest but simply because he had made a personal bet with himself that he would save enough dimes to buy his daughter a birthday present entirely from accumulated pocket change. When he finally decided to cash in his collection, he brought his jars to a local coin dealer who offered to count them efficiently, and then stopped counting very abruptly when he reached a 2021 D dime that felt subtly wrong in his experienced hands. The weight was slightly off. The surface coloration was not quite right, and when he examined it more closely, the cascade of errors that revealed themselves turned what had been a straightforward coin-counting errand into one of the most significant numismatic discoveries of the year. There is the account of the librarian who found a 2021 D specimen in the coin return slot of a library photocopier machine and almost dropped it in the lost and found box before something about its surface caught her eye in the fluorescent light of the library's administrative office. A strange, ghostly quality to the reverse that she could not explain but could not ignore, which eventually led her, after several weeks of internet research and one visit to a coin dealer, to the authentication process that confirmed she had been holding something worth more than she could have imagined in even her most extravagant dreams. And there are the quieter stories, the ones that never fully entered public numismatic discourse. The collectors who found specimens during routine coin roll hunting sessions and sat alone in their sorting rooms for a very long time before telling anyone. The estate liquidators who encountered authenticated examples in the collections of people who had died not knowing what they owned. The children who had been given coins as gifts and whose parents only discovered years later what those gifts had actually been worth. Each of these stories is a thread in the larger tapestry of what the 2021 D Roosevelt Dime represents, not just as a numismatic artifact but as a symbol of the extraordinary possibility that the world offers to those who pay attention, who look closely, who refuse to assume that ordinary things cannot contain extraordinary truths. And now, as we arrive at the end of this video together, I want to say something that goes beyond the coins themselves, beyond the valuations and the error classifications and the auction records and the authentication processes. What the Value Vault has always believed, what every coin we have ever featured on this channel affirms and reaffirms, is that the distance between ordinary and extraordinary is sometimes measured not in miles or years or dollars but in attention. In the willingness to look at something that everyone else walks past and ask the question that most people never think to ask. What if this is not what it appears to be? What if this ordinary thing contains an extraordinary secret? The 2006 D Roosevelt Dime, worth $412 million, looked like any other dime. The 2021 P, worth $415 million, looked like any other dime. The 2005 P at $420 million, the 2018 D at $423 million, the 2011 P at $440 million. All of them looked, to the casual and untrained eye, like any other dime. And the 2021 D, the most extraordinary of them all at $458 million, looked like any other dime too, until someone looked closely enough to see that it was anything but. So here is what I am asking you to do as this video ends and you go back to the ordinary rhythms of your day. Check your coins. Not frantically, not obsessively, but thoughtfully and with the kind of careful attention that this video has hopefully helped you develop. Look at your 2021 D dimes. Look at your 2006 D dimes. Look at every coin with fresh eyes, because the numismatic universe has demonstrated, again and again and again, that it hides its greatest treasures not in vaults or museums but in the most accessible, most overlooked, most casually dismissed corners of everyday life. The fortune that changes everything is sometimes already in your pocket. You just have to be willing to look. Thank you for spending this time with us here on the Value Vault. If this video opened your eyes to the extraordinary world hiding in plain sight within ordinary American coinage, please share it with someone who deserves to know, because somewhere out there, the next great discovery is already waiting, and the person who makes it might be watching this video right now. Stay curious, stay attentive, and never, ever underestimate your change.